Hello, my name is Glatz. I'd like to welcome everybody who's watching this. Thank you for having me. This is an online version of my talk, Under Fire, Search and Rescue at Central Mediterranean Sea, which I held 2 weeks before at AGN Congress in Graz. Thanks to the chairman, especially Simon Orlop, who invited me to do this. And I have to say, this is my first online talk, and my English is also a little bit rusty. So I'd like to apologize for any inconvenience in the course. Yeah, let's start. First, I want to declare no conflict of interest here, and you will ask yourself, why is he doing that? This isn't even scientific. But with catchy headlines like this from a German newspaper last summer, which reads, Search and Rescue NGOs, are they taking money from traffickers? I want to assure you that nobody I know, no organization, no volunteer is taking any money from criminals. Just a few words to introduce myself. I used to work as a paramedic offshore, as an offshore rig medic, and paramedic winchman for a search and rescue operator in the German North Sea, where a huge wind energy business is growing at the moment. Yeah, with this, I made my first deep dive into maritime environment and maritime rescue. And I wanted to use my experience and my skills otherwise. So I joined first the NGO Sea-Watch for a nearshore rescue mission in Greece. And then I joined the NGO Jugendrettet, which means youth rescues in English. Which was founded in 2015 in Berlin after 2 major boat incidents in the Mediterranean Sea with more than 700 casualties. So it's a grassroots movement. So we started with like 10 people, mostly students, who crowdfunded their own vessel, an old fish trawler, the MS Juventa, which you can see here on the picture. And they crowdfunded it within half a year and refurbished it to a fully operational rescue vessel. And we managed it to save more than 14,000 people out of distress in 1 year. So to understand what search and rescue NGOs really do and how they operate, we have to take a closer look to Libya and the so-called search and rescue zone, which is approximately 120,000 square kilometers big. And search and rescue zones are originally defined by the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, which declares a search and rescue zone and dedicates it to a neighboring state, which is capable of delivering search and rescue and also capable of operating a maritime Rescue Coordination Center, an MRCC. It's like a dispatch for maritime environments. But Libya, as a destabilized state after the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, is obviously not capable of doing that. So the buck was passed to Malta first, who rejected, and then to Italy, who took over and started the biggest civilian rescue operation ever known. It was called Mare Nostrum. After Mare Nostrum ended, we had a rising presence of search and rescue NGOs in the Mediterranean Sea. And you have to understand that we don't just go there and randomly pick up people and bring them to Europe. All rescue operations are under the command of the Italian MRCC and the Italian Coast Guard. So they send us a location from a distress call, and we respond there. In the following, I want to show you some cases we encounter at the Mediterranean Sea, and I want to use the common terms we use over radio and talks. What you can see here is a so-called rubber boat. In fact, it's a huge dinghy. It's 12 meters long, 3 meters wide. It's equipped with a small outboard engine and enough gasoline to reach international waters. It has no navigational devices, no rescue devices, no supplies. And we can say that the boat himself represents a maritime emergency. When we have a closer look to the boat, we see more than 120 to 150 persons crowded in this boat. Women and children, mostly in assumed safety in the middle of the boat. So if a tube deflates or there's a panic on board, they're often the first ones who get crushed. What we see here is a so-called wooden boat. They're mostly old fishing boats, not built for high seas. They're built for nearshore fishing. They're crowded with around 50 to 80 people. And the problem here is that they're very unstable because they have a long and narrow keel or bottom. So if the weight switches to one side of the boat, it capsizes very fast. We can take it also up one more notch. This is a so-called big wooden boat. They're mostly old fishing vessels or fishing trawlers. We find sometimes more than 700 to 1,000 refugees on one of these boats. And they are highly complex rescue operations because you see a lot of people on deck, but most of the refugees are in several decks, which you don't see from the outside. There are no rescue paths out of these decks. So if the vessel capsizes when people shift to one side, the people can't get out of the inside. We have also seen carbon monoxide poisonings in there because the engine is lacking. And the third thing is that in these boats, we can't just switch the engine off because it keeps the bilge pump running. So sometimes they're uncontrollable. When we get a position of distress call, we proceed with the Juventa, like a mothership system, with full speed to this position. And full speed means 9 to 10 knots. It's around 16 kilometers per hour. So it's not very fast, and you have to think, when you talk over response times, you have to think in hours, not in minutes. So these are often the most difficult situations on board when you respond to a call and you know that there are people in the water, there's a tube deflating, there's panic, and you need like 2 hours to go there. So in immediate radius of the target vessel, we launch our RIP, our rigid hulled inflatable boat. It's a small, fast rescue boat. It's equipped with 150 life jackets with floating devices. There's a driver on board, a communicator who speaks Arabic and French in the best case, and English for sure. And one on-scene coordinator who's also in the most cases he's a paramedic, who makes a triage when we respond to these boats. And depending on the situation, the most crucial thing is to hand out life jackets to every person on the refugee boat, because few of the refugees can swim. So if during a rescue operation a panic breaks out and people fall in the water, they will drown immediately. So we equip them all with life jackets first. So if anything occurs, we can see them, they're floating, and we can pick them up one by one. So after establishing contact, we hand out life jackets. In some cases, we evacuate the most critical persons on board, and also very small children and women. And then they are transferred to a vessel with a greater capacity, because the Juventa can't take the people to Italy or to Europe or in a safe harbor. So we have to transfer the people to a bigger vessel. But in some cases, we have to take them on board, waiting for transit. And there we can also deliver medical care. One thing I want to highlight here are these so-called centifloats, these big orange sausages you see in this picture. They're a huge advantage in complex rescue missions because if the situation is critical, not everybody has life vests, people are jumping in the water, we have panic. People can grab these small handles you see at this sausage and stay over water, and you buy yourself a certain amount of time till you can pick everybody up. Yeah, medical care. We see this is an example of the most common cases we see on board. It ranges from complex critical care situations to general practice. We have a small hospital on board. It's capable of delivering critical care to maximum for 2 patients. And our resources are really limited. For example, oxygen. So if we have a critical care patient, unstable patient, it's recommended to transfer him to a vessel with a bigger capacity or to winch him off via helicopter. So we see a lot of dehydrations because the people are exposed to the sun for hours, sometimes for days. Most of them are not used to high seas, so they suffer from seasickness. One thing I didn't experience either before were the so-called fuel burns. And this is a term for 1st to 2nd degree chemical burns, which are caused by a mixture of gasoline and salt water, which is inside the refugee boats. And it affects mostly feet, thighs, and the urogenital region of the people who are sitting inside the boat. So the first problem is that per refugee boat, we don't have just 1 or 2 cases we have to treat. We have like 20, 30, 40 cases. So we contacted burn experts from different German university hospitals to make a standard operating procedure for this. And at first we established or we set up showers on the main deck. So the people come on board, they take their clothes out, they take a shower, decontaminate themselves, and they get new clothes. And the deeper lacerations, the deeper fuel burns, they are treated by us with a polyhexanate, diluted polyhexanate solution, and sterile gauze, and then the people are transferred to a vessel with bigger capacity. We also see sometimes gunshot wounds, mostly old wounds in the upper extremities or lower extremities, and they are often used from the Libyan militias or smugglers to force the people on the boat. They don't want to kill because nobody pays for a dead migrant. So they shoot them in their extremities and send them on the boat as an example for the others. And the last thing I want to mention are also obstetric and gynecological emergencies or cases. Because a lot of women, they start their travel in the last trimester of their pregnancy. And we observe that the stress and the life-threatening circumstances of the crossing are often sometimes like a trigger for premature labor. And what we also see are the aftermath of sexual assault and rape in detention camps in Libya, in women as well as men. So Under Fire, this title of the talk implicates that we work under a permanent hail of bullets flying around us. So I thought about it, and I came down to 3 major circumstances the search and rescue workers in the central Mediterranean Sea are exposed. So the first is that we are dealing with a rising number of mass casualty incidents. So we observed that Libyan smugglers changed their tactics. So they send not 1 or 2 boats, they send like 15 boats in a row. in good weather conditions. So, for example, at Easter weekend last year, there were like 7,000 migrants at sea in several hours, and all the capacities were not enough to treat these cases. This is a snapshot from an aircraft. You see Juventa here in the back, and in the front, one rubber boat with deflating tubes. People in the water, people are grabbing life rafts and the Sentifloat. And this is a highly complex rescue operation. And if you have more than one boat where this occurs, we have not enough capacities. So we have to rely on the help of the Navy or Italian government, Italian Coast Guard ships who come to help with bigger capacities and more RIPs. And we observed that the number of official vessels out there is slightly decreasing to create a state of deterrence. And this is not acceptable because it will just lead to more deaths on this route. Now we come to bullets and violence. The most cases of violence against search and rescue NGOs we see are forced by the so-called Libyan Coast Guard, which is trained and equipped by the European Union, at one hand for search and rescue, and the other hand also for pushback actions to bring migrants back to Libya. And the real role stays a little bit unclear. Also, who is really in command over these groups? They come sometimes from militia members in Libya who are fighting against each other, and are sometimes also in control of the smuggling and migrant market. This is a radio transmission sent by the Libyan Coast Guard towards a search and rescue boat from Proactiva, Open Arms, and they threaten to shoot them if they don't hand out rescued migrants to the Libyan Coast Guard. And threats like this are not acceptable. They are against all rules of good seamanship, and there is no legal background to use lethal force against the rescue ship. So I brought some cases with me I want to show you. The first one occurred in May 2017. It was recorded by the vessel or the organization Sea-Watch. They were on their way to a location, to a distress location, and were followed by a Libyan Coast Guard ship, and this is what happened. Yeah, you can see this is a highly dangerous incident where people could have died, and there's still traffic rules at sea, and also the Libyan Coast Guard has to obey it. The second thing I brought with me is a case from September 2017, where a Libyan Coast Guard vessel took over the command of a rescue operation. Sea-Watch, the organization you see in the back of this picture, was rescuing a migrant boat, and the Libyan Coast Guard showed up and took over. And they caused mass panic by highly unprofessional behavior. They were shouting at the migrants, they were beating them, they were throwing potatoes at the migrants. So the boat capsized and people were in the water, they cannot swim. And there were 5 dead migrants at the end. And there's also a video of it, which you can see here. And there's one young man. Whoops. No. There's one young man falling down at the railing, and the Libyan Coast Guard members are kicking him down and then speeding up their boat, and he hangs still at one wooden ladder at the side of the boat. So this case ended with an Italian Navy helicopter who stopped the Libyan Coast Guard vessel. This picture shows a Libyan Coast Guard vessel aboard the Juventa, our ship. They boarded the Juventa. It was, in this case, more friendly than other situations. But the NGOs also registered shots at NGO boats. NGO boats were boarded and the crews were threatened. So we made some preparations to encounter this more dangerous situation over the last periods. So we established a so-called lockdown procedure, which means if a vessel approaches and it's unidentified or it's threatening members of the Juventa crew, we proceed with the lockdown. So the whole crew gathers in the engine room. We close the door. We have a radio with us, a satellite phone, and supplies, and waiting for further help. We wanted also to establish IFACs, or individual first aid kits, at the bridge and also on our fast rescue vessel with hemostatic gauze and tourniquets if shots are fired and crew members are hit. And the last thing we did, we established a 24/7 legal support team, which is reachable and can proceed with informing the flag state of the ship and also the government. Yeah, the last circumstance we encountered is this politics and the media, for sure. And I think it's the most important point. At the beginning, there was like a friendly media echo, but it turned over the last year because some politics and also some media, also right-wing media, they established a toxic narrative, what I want to call it. So one of the theses is that search and rescue NGOs represent a pull factor for migration activities. Pull factor means that we pull the people out of Africa and bring them to Europe, or we bring them to leave their homes and go to Europe. So the Oxford University, the Faculty of Law, made an analysis. It's very interesting. And they had a look at total arrivals at one period, or during periods with high search and rescue capacities and low search and rescue capacities. And as you can see in the left diagram, that the arrivals were quite higher in periods of low search and rescue capacity. So the conclusion is that the number of arrivals is more linked to a change in the political and economic situation of the migrants, and not linked with the presence of search and rescue NGOs. The next thesis is that search and rescue NGOs multiply the danger of crossing the Mediterranean. And the collective Blaming the Rescuers made a very interesting analysis, and they compared the migrant mortality with the presence of search and rescue NGO vessels at the Mediterranean Sea. And there's this coincidence, as you can see, that if there are more search and rescue vessels, the mortality goes down. And if there are less NGO vessels, the mortality goes up to the sky. You should also know that more than 60% of the migrants are not rescued by search and rescue vessels. They're rescued by official institutions like the Italian Coast Guard or the Navy. The last thesis is that search and rescue NGOs support human traffickers. And in our case, it happened at in August last year that our ship, the Juventa, was seized by the Italian government under the accusation that we work with traffickers and that we are linked with traffickers and perhaps get also money from them. So I want to present you two main evidence pictures of the Juventa case. In this one, you can see the Juventa on the right side and an empty refugee boat in the middle, and two small fast rescue boats. And the Italian police stated that these are our rescue boats and we are bringing the empty migrant boat back to Libya to be used again. So this is wrong. These are not our boats. These are fast rescue boats from the organization Save the Children, who were transferring migrants from Juventa to a vessel with a bigger capacity. So these are not our boats, and we had not the intention to bring boats back to Libya. And the second picture is this one. It's very interesting. There you can see on the left a small fast rescue boat, a small RIP. It's from our organization. It's a RIP of the Juventa. In the middle, you can see a rubber boat with migrants on. And on the right side, you can see a smaller vessel with 2 or 3 Libyan men on it. It's named here as traficanti, as smugglers. And the Italian authorities stated that in this picture, you can see that we work together with traffickers and that we take over the migrants from traffickers. But this is not right. These guys on the right, they are engine fishers, so-called engine fishers. These are mostly Libyan fishermen who pay their bills by stealing engines from migrant boats or from refugee boats and sell them back in Libya to the traffickers. So we didn't have any contact with these guys. And the problem is that they're often not friendly and sometimes they are armed. So we try to avoid any contact with them. But it's not our task to prevent them from stealing this motor. It's the task of an authority or the Italian authorities. So these engine fishers are not new. This is a picture I was also a witness of. You can see 3 fast rescue boats from the Italian Coast Guard pursuing a refugee boat, and also 2 larger fishing vessels who tried to steal the motor. So the problem is known and it's not new, and it's used in this in these accusations to hold the Juventa or to seize the Juventa. If you want to know more about the accusations and the case of Juventa, I'd like to recommend you the website Forensic Architecture, who made a very interesting video and reframed the whole case. And you can see there what happened. I just want to conclude that all these circumstances brought us to a state where much more less search and rescue NGO capacity is out there. So in 2015, in 2016 and 2017, we had from 5 to up to 14 rescue vessels or private rescue vessels supporting the rescue on sea, on the central Mediterranean Sea, and doing humanitarian work in the central Mediterranean. But now, under these circumstances, there are just 3 ships and 1 airplane left. And if we have a closer look to the statistics, we can see that the number of migrants arrived, it decreased, but the mortality went also up high. So at the moment, 1 of 20 migrants dies during the crossing. So with this, I want to close the talk. I thank you very much for listening. And if you need more information, just check out these websites, check out youth rescues in the internet. I'd like to thank you very much.